All right, hello everybody. Thank you for coming to our presentation today. We are the Duke Attend team, and we're looking forward to sharing our work that we've done on the past 10 weeks with you guys. We're going to be doing questions at the end, so if you can hold them until then, that'd be greatly appreciated. So my name's Joey, and before we get started, we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves, roll call style. So is Eric here? Is Rosine here?
Present.
What about Rebecca?
Here.
Tochi?
Present.
And Tyler?
I'm right here.
So yeah, we worked on this attendance app together, and it's just been a great time getting to know each other and working together. There's also a few other people that are important to mention before we get started as well. And these are our team leads. Alabian, Nathan, and Mustafa were all incredibly helpful in generating ideas for us and also giving us technical advice. Finally, three more people that are super important to mention as well is our sponsor, Kent Pollock, who works at Transact and has experience working on attendance apps. So we could go to him for advice. And then also our stakeholders, Andrew Hilton and Rabia Yunus, who came to us with the problem of tracking their student attendance in their graduate level classes. So I'm now going to pass it on to Rebecca to go over exactly what problem we were trying to address.
Yes, the problems we have been addressing over the past 10 weeks include how can we track students' attendance in a seamless and an efficient process for both the professor and the students. We also address how can professors easily intervene with students if they have not been showing up to class and it has been affecting their performance in the class. Lastly, how can we integrate with the Canvas learning management system since Duke is starting to use Canvas next year? In the past, our stakeholders have come up with solutions such as using paper and pencil to write the students' names. However, this allows students to cheat the system, and it's also very time-consuming for the professor. They have also attempted to use Duke ID scanners, but they have lag to them and the iPad also logs off. So even though the student scans their IDs, they're not properly checked in. The professor also has to bring and set up the scanners for each class, and that also becomes a hassle. So we will now present a video demonstrating our solution to these problems.
Right. So I hope y'all enjoyed that short little commercial for our solution. And to go into more depth, so we wanted to make a hassle-free solution that gave quick and real-time confirmation for both the student and the teacher. To do that, we made a mobile app for students and then a web app for the teachers to use. Our solution is also Duke focused, which is unlike other attendance tracking apps already on the market because those are usually generic so that they can apply to many colleges, but ours would be Duke focused in the sense that we'll be pooling real Duke classes and data internally from Streamer. We'll also want to use the Canvas API to pull more additional student information through API calls, and also upload the attendance records from our web app as a grade to Canvas in a seamless and easy way for teachers. We ultimately chose to use NFC tags instead of other attendance tracking options such as biometrics, GPS, Bluetooth, and Wi-Fi. And now I'll pass it on to Tochi to talk more in depth about why we chose NFC tags.
Yeah, thank you, Rosine. Like Rosine said, you might be wondering why we chose NFC chips as opposed to other technology that's out there. Well, starting off, NFC chips are extremely inexpensive. One NFC chip costs 32 cents, but when bought in bulk, NFC chips can cost even lower than that. Secondly, NFC chips can be placed anywhere in a classroom. What we aim is to have each NFC chip and its serial number to be associated with a specific classroom. So once the chip is stationed, that spot can be the dedicated space where students can take attendance, leaving no room for confusion. NFC chips also enable real-time communication with our iOS and web app. Once students enter the classroom and scan the tag, information such as their name, Duke unique ID, and the time the NFC chip was scanned, and other information that are important are sent to our web app, ensuring that attendance records are accurate. Lastly, compared to other technology that's out there, such as Bluetooth beacons, biometrics, and GPS tracking, NFC chips are non-invasive, which is great because student privacy are protected. And now I'll hand it off to Tyler to go over our tech stack.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tochi. So like we mentioned earlier, there's two separate portions of our application. The first portion is an iOS app that's dedicated for students to check into their classes as well as check their previous attendance records. And we also have a web app that's used for professors to also look and manage their classes. So for the iOS side of things, we use the Xcode IDE, which is a development environment that's created by Apple and we use the Swift programming language to implement all the functionality within our application. In terms of our web app, we used HTML and CSS for the main designing of our front end. And we also use hints of JavaScript here and there to spice it up a little bit. In terms of our backend, we use the Ruby on Rails infrastructure, which is utilized on many different web apps across Duke's campus, as well as PostgreSQL to store all the data within our database, such as attendance records. And now I'm going to pass it on to Eric to talk about where we currently are standing after these 10 weeks in Code Plus.
All right. So over these past 10 weeks, we certainly have learned a lot, and I feel we've been able to put that to a honestly amazing amount of progress. First of all, we've designed and implemented the interfaces for both our iOS and web apps. We have taken our idea of an NFC-based attendance app and we've put that into reality. We've integrated NFCs into the scanning process with our apps. We set up a API endpoint on our web app, which allows our two apps to communicate with each other. And most importantly, we have secured both of these apps with authentication, thanks to the help of OIT DevOps, specifically Sherry Tibbs and Harry Thacker. Now we have another video, another demo to show off these features.
Welcome to Duke Attend, the centralized hub for tracking attendance at Duke University. Today, we'll be showing you the features of our application. Let's begin. In order to set up our app, professors will navigate to our website and sign in using Shibboleth authentication. Once logged in, they are presented with a dashboard. On the left side, there's a list of all the professors' classes. In the central area, there are 4 options to manage the specific course you're looking at. Let's look into the Today's Attendance section. On this page, professors will see the live attendance of the class as well as their entire roster sorted by present, late, and absent. If the professor wants to notify a student to come to class, there is an email button. And in the case of manual override, the professor can simply use the edit button to change the attendance on the spot. In the records section, professors can look at past attendance to see who has been showing up to their class. These records look very similar to the Today's Attendance page. However, the progress bars are now gray. We also implemented a CSV export function that downloads the attendance records for class that day. Alternatively, you can also export all records for the class at once. On the roster page, the professor can see a list of all their students and check up on who's been showing up or missing their class. Looks like Amy Lee needs to get their act together. If you need to edit their attendance record, you can manually do so here as well. For professor intervention, they can contact the individual student here via email. Finally, we have the settings page where professors can view their information and change the late times for their class. If they wanted to count students late 30 minutes after class starts, they can manually input it and it would automatically load on our end. And that concludes the website for professors. Let's look at the student POV from our iOS application. The only initial setup students need to do is log into SHIB through the app, and this should be a one-time thing. Once logged in, the student will not be asked to sign in again. Now let's pretend we're headed to class. Our app features notifications that will alert you when you should be signing into a certain class at a certain time. Once you enter class, one of our NFC tags should be at the entrance of the room. All students need to do is press the check-in button, scan their device to the tag, and voila, they're marked present. It's that easy. If students want to check their past attendance records, they can navigate to a list of all their classes. Then, select the specific class they want to look at. Let's look at ECE 551. Here, we can see all the students' records for ECE 551. Now let's see what kind of settings we have for our application. In the settings page, there's a way for students to log out if needed, a way to toggle push notifications, and a way to switch between light and dark mode. Pretty neat, huh? And with that, concludes our demo for Duke Attend. Thanks for watching.
So yeah, thank you for watching our demo. Even though it shows that we've done a whole bunch of work in these past 10 weeks, there's still a lot more things to do. With our project, our goal was to provide a minimum viable product to highlight how this app is possible. But there's still a lot of other features that need to be implemented. One of these is Canvas integration. Right now, we could tweak our CSV files, and if we tweak them to how Canvas takes them in as grades, then professors could manually upload those CSV files as attendance grades to Canvas. But our goal would be to work with Duke's Canvas team so that this upload of grades from the Duke Attend app to Canvas will be automatic. Another thing that we showed in our ad is push notifications. And right now, our push notifications are only local. So we would need to set up a server that our iOS and web app could communicate with so that those push notifications could go out automatically. Professors could choose how often they go out, and students could choose how often they would receive them. Another thing is with optimization, we've only been testing our web app and iOS app with a select amount of data. And we know that once this actually goes into use fully on Duke's campus, then we'd be getting a lot more data. So we'd want to make sure that our database and web app can handle receiving much more information. Another important thing to note is that for our project, we only worked on iOS development, but there are some students at Duke that have Android phones. So for our app to go out to the entire student body, we would need to make sure that we also develop an Android app so that those students could be marked present as well. Another thing, because we were only 6 undergraduate students working on this project, we weren't allowed to access student data of which exact classes they were attending and what classes they had signed up for because of FERPA regulations and Duke admin regulations. But once we work closer with Duke admin, we will be able to implement a way to upload through certain API calls or other databases that Duke admin have access to. We can upload this student information directly to our app. Also with professor data, right now we have been coding in which classes professors are teaching, because based on our streamer API calls, we can search for a specific class and then receive that professor. But we would like our app to, upon a professor's login, be able to know which classes that professor is teaching, similar to how you can search on Duke Hub a professor's name and see all of their classes. Finally, there's a couple more features we would like to implement. One of them being on the iOS app, we would like to have a dispute button. So instead of a student having to go the roundabout way of emailing their professor, hey, I was marked absent a week ago, but I was really present, they could just dispute that directly from the app, which would send something to the web app where the professor could check and see, oh, this is where the students have said that they were actually present. I can fix this right now. And also one final thing is that we would like to create an admin page, because when we set up the links between our NFC tags and our classrooms, that is done through our database and through migrations. But by setting up a separate web app page, this could be done way more easily by professors or anyone at Duke instead of having to go directly into our database. So that's all we have today for our presentation, and we'll be happy to take any questions you have now. Thank you for listening.